Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
Those reshuffled cabinet ministers speak out on their new appointments.
The opposition leader slams the government over their response to that Exuma tragedy.
Cabinet ministers gear up for CARICOM's recommendation on marijuana.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, amid skepticism over the Prime Minister's decision to shuffle certain members of his cabinet after just 1 year in office, two of those reassigned ministers are defending the move. This as the opposition likened it to shuffling a deck of bad cards. Jillian Gray reports.
It's like shuffling a deck of bad cards. That's how opposition leader Philip Davis described the decision by Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis to shuffle four of his cabinet ministers just 14 months into his administration's term in office. We asked Davis if he thought other cabinet portfolios should have been reassigned.
Quite frankly, I think they ought to be shuffled all out.
Agriculture Minister Renwood Wells was moved to Transport and Local Government. Frankie Campbell was shuffled from Transport to Social Services, taking that ministerial post from Lanisha Roll, who heads to Youth, Sports and Culture. She replaces Michael Pintard, who becomes the new Minister of Agriculture. Davis says the reshuffle was to the benefit of the poor, hungry and dispossessed, who are relieved of the disaster visited upon them in Lanisha Roll as Social Services Minister. However, Davis says sadly she is now let loose on the sports, youth and cultural community when she should have been dispatched to the backbench. Roll declined comment outside cabinet today, but Campbell and Wells told reporters they're eager to tackle their new roles.
Ministers are agents of the government to drive the government's policy. And I would have done that to what I believe is the best of my ability in the Ministry of Transport. It is my prayer that I will take the same zeal and the same pride to the Ministry of Social Services.
I don't believe that there's going to be any reduction in the energy that we bring to bring the requisite results for and on behalf of the Bahamian people.
Dr. Minnis has said the move gives individuals exposure and experience in different ministries. When asked if they were surprised by the cabinet shuffle so early in this term, Wells and Campbell insisted they serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister.
And the Prime Minister has the right to decide where it is he wants to move ministers and in what portfolio he believes that we're able to bring the requisite results that he is seeking in his government. And it's our job to either say we're going to accept or not accept.
But Frankie Campbell was continuously aware that he served at the pleasure of the Prime Minister and that the Prime Minister could wake up any morning and make such a decision. So Frankie Campbell behaved like the 5 wise virgins, kept his lamp trim.
Now again, those cabinet ministers will not move to their new positions until tomorrow. Reporting for our news, I'm Jillian Gray.
Well, Progressive Liberal Party leader Philip Davis is accusing the Minnis administration of being behind the 8 ball when it comes to addressing the international fallout surrounding the deadly Exuma boating accident. Jasmine Brown has that.
The PLP leader says he doesn't believe the Minnis administration understands exactly how big an issue the Exuma tragedy is, as he says their response has been lacking. During his monthly press conference at PLP headquarters on Tuesday, the party leader said he believes the Minnis administration has been too silent on the boating accident.
It has to be properly managed.
10 American passengers and 2 Bahamian crew members were headed out for a half-day tour of the Exuma Keys, but minutes after the boat left Baratari in Exuma, it exploded, killing 1 woman and injuring 9 others. The boat, a 4 Seas Adventures craft, was carrying the guests to visit the world-famous swimming pigs on Big Major Key. Davis says it will have a negative impact on the tourism industry.
We must not underestimate the seriousness of this tragedy. We are understandably concerned about the silence of the government on this serious issue. The government must act responsibly and be truthful, transparent, and proactive in dealing with this sensitive matter, as it is now an international incident with repercussions for our recovering tourism product.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis said on Monday an official letter from the government expressing condolences was issued, but offered no further comment, noting the matter is still under active investigation.
We appreciate that the investigation is ongoing. I don't think he was called upon to speak about the events surrounding the circumstances that may have led to the tragic event. There are other issues that evolved from the event having happened, and that is the seriousness of it. He could have responded to that. He could have spoken to those persons who were injured.
Davis said the government should have assured all involved, including the international community, of a thorough and transparent investigation that will lead to a greater level of accountability. Meanwhile, PLP Deputy Leader in Exuma's and Ryan Island MP Chester Cooper says despite the tragedy, Exuma will recover.
We will rise again. Yep. This will be a temporary moment of reflection to improve our game, recognizing that accidents do happen.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
The PLP leader also hitting out at the government over what he calls its lack of proper planning on the eradication of shanty towns across the country. Davis says he believes the Minnis administration is trying to gain popularity by saving what it thinks Bahamians want to hear.
I think it's popular for me to say I'm going to get rid of shanty towns. So that's popular. But then at the end of the day, could it be effective? Could you effect that statement? And you're now seeing the result of those things. It's coming back to bite them.
In mid-March, the government announced plans to tear down all structures in shantytown communities that do not meet building code standards. The government has implemented a July 31st, 2019 deadline for its regulation effort in Abaco and a July 31st deadline of this year for shantytowns on New Providence. Davis says there are serious concerns about adequate housing on both islands.
Their latest response speaks to their lack of vision and planning. We continually remind and say to the Bahamian public that these persons were elected without a plan or vision, and is being manifested daily. Right? You plan to rid yourselves of shanty towns. What would have been the consequences of that? You're displacing people.
Dr. Nicola Virgil Roll has been appointed director of the National Insurance Board with effect from July 1st, 2018. She replaces Patricia Hermans, who tendered her resignation as NIB director last month. Roll is credited with leading the creation of the National Development Plan and creating the framework for the government's Over-the-Hill Revitalization Project. She previously served as Director of Financial Services and Director of Economic Planning, Development and Planning. Well, CARICOM's Regional Commission on Marijuana is getting ready to make its recommendation on the way forward for the controversial substance. It's widely believed that the Commission will suggest CARICOM member states reform their marijuana laws. Jared Higgs has more.
With all signs pointing to the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana recommending the end of prohibition, Minister of Health Dr. Dwayne Sands reiterated that government will be guided by the Commission's recommendations, but he's waiting for the official report.
Now, there was a leaked version of the recommendations or report, and we can't act on the basis of a leaked report. We expect that when the Prime Minister goes to CARICOM, I think next week, that the official report will be released. Then we will discuss it. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of anticipation. We will be guided by that report as we said we would.
Leaders from CARICOM nations will convene in Montego Bay, Jamaica from July 4th through 6th for the 39th CARICOM Heads of Government meeting. CARICOM General Secretary Erwin LaRoque indicated to reporters in Jamaica that the Commission will be making some far-reaching recommendations in terms of decriminalization and moving towards regulation of marijuana as a controlled substance.
There is significant medical evidence on both sides. Particularly when you're talking about juvenile brains, that marijuana is not innocuous. There have been recent reports published by no less an organization than the World Health Organization that suggests that at least CBD, which is a component of marijuana, when used medically, is both safe and probably effective.
Sands also noted that medical marijuana legislation, which is currently being heavily considered in Barbados, is often the predecessor to the substance being fully legalized.
The discussion will rage on, but medical marijuana is really just usually the door for recreational marijuana.
Now, we also caught up with Minister of National Security Marvin Dames, who, despite being peppered by reporters, didn't want to address the issue until he saw the actual CARICOM report. Reporting for our news, I'm Jared Higgs.
On paper, it may seem Omar Davis had everything stacked against him. With a deceased father and a mother left to raise 2 boys on her own, Omar wasn't dealt the best hand. But his story is one of how tragedy turned into triumph. Here's Kyle Joaquin.
17-year-old Omar Davis is on his lunch break from his summer job at the accounting firm KPMG. But he takes a minute to talk with us about his most recent accomplishment and his goals.
I want to go to college. I'm going to Central State University. After, I want to graduate with my degree in finance. Afterwards, I'd like to be a CFO or even the Minister of Finance.
You see, Omar has defeated the odds and has been doing so for the past 5 years. This August, he'll be the first member of his immediate family to attend college on a full scholarship. Coming from an area some may describe as the ghetto along Kemp Road, Omar has made no excuses. His worst nightmare on a summer night in 2013 when his father was shot 8 times. Omar watched him take his last breath.
The man shot and killed at Abraham Street off Kemp Road has been identified as 31-year-old Omar Davis, a resident of St. James Road. Davis was reportedly fatally shot when he arrived at the Abraham Street residence.
I was heartbroken, I was scarred. I didn't know what to do, what to say, what to think.
Omar's mother works in the kitchen at Atlantis. His family far from rich. But with all the odds stacked against him, this teen applied himself. Graduated high school not just with distinction, but the top of his class. And now he's off on a full ride to Central State University in Ohio.
It was a long application. Then it was the interview. Then on June 8th, we was notified via email. And we got the whoever got the scholarship was notified.
What went through your mind when you saw the email?
I was happy.
Omar is your average 17-year-old. When he's not in his books, he's on Snapchat or hanging with his friends. He says he even enjoys helping his 10-year-old brother with his homework. And as he starts this new chapter in his life, Omar gives these words of encouragement to young people.
Don't let their past or their current circumstances define who they are. Keep a tunnel vision, stay focused, and achieve what they want to achieve.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
When Our News comes back from the break, find out how the VAT rate change went. That's coming up when Our News returns.